Hey guys, what is up? It's Biff, and you are back in the Fearless Mods garage where we are still working on our 2005 Nissan Titan. We've got a lot of goodies in here that we finished up last time, silver bits and black bits that are all gonna go on here, but before they can, we need to do some paint correction to this orange peel and any of the misty spots we have so it can be 100% perfect before we start sticking things to the outside that we would have to buff around. Okay, so we're set up again real quick with a makeshift paint booth. Mainly just means we covered everything we don't want to get paint on. And we are going to just go ahead and finish the last piece of painting we've got. I've already scuffed it and given it one wipe down with wax and grease remover. So now I'll give it another wipe down, tack cloth it, mix some paint, and we'll be ready to shoot this thing. Let's finish up the painting on this thing and move on to all the cutting and buffing.
All right, we have my full can of clear ready to go. It's the last of our clear coat with the fast activator for the cooler temps. So this is it. We paint this thing and we are all done with the silver and the clear and the black.
All right, so what we're gonna be doing here is we got a lot of misting in the middle here where I was probably reaching across. Really nice over here on the edges, but in the middle, and you can probably hear that, just too much misting of the clear coat here. So I've got these aluminum blocks that I'm going to use to sand this very true. I'm gonna start with the 800 grit paper, maybe wrapped around here and make her stay put. And we're gonna go in a crisscross pattern here. You can quickly hear the difference and feel it too. It's nice and smooth underneath there. I can feel it here, I can't feel it here. It comes off quick and you don't want to overwork this. This is 800 grit. Any corners we don't want to burn through because we would do that quite rapidly. So we'll use the smaller block in any of these areas that need it. But we're definitely getting rid of that misting, and so we're just going to keep going here. Doing a good job getting the mist off the top, but we might still have a little bit of orange peel underneath. Not as concerned about it up here on top. Main thing I want to do here is get the misting off of it so it'll be slick. But certainly down on the sides of the bed where we have the orange peel, we're going to probably be taking off just a little bit more of the clear coat to smooth that out through those divots. So you can see how we've gotten rid of the crusty mist on top over here completely. Some other areas, but you can still see this is what is left of the orange peel and a little bit of the mist. So I am going to continue sanding this area just a little bit more to try to get that a little more evened out before we move up to the next grid of sandpaper. Next step after the 800 will be the 1200 and then the 1500 before we go to a compound, polishing compound, and then our swirl remover and wax. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the front edge of this with the 800 before we switch over. So the nice thing about these aluminum blocks is it gives us a good flat cut on this initial hit with the 800 grit. Once we then move to the 1200 and 1500, we will use the rubberized blocks to take out the scratches from the 800 and then subsequently take out the scratches from the 1200 until we get it all sanded up to the 1500 ready for the compound. with the exception of just a few little speckles here, which means there are some lower spots in the orange peel, but very minimal, very minimal. And with this being on top, we're going to consider this good to go. Obviously, this was the first area we sprayed. We knew we were going to have some issues up here trying to get the spray pattern down, and that's why we put them on top, so they can be hidden. We're doing our best to correct it and make it look better. Now that we have gotten the initial sanding done, now we're gonna move up to the 1500 grit with the soft sanding pad. Again, each time we do it with the bar, we went at diagonals. Then with the other one, we went straight crisscrosses so we could see if there were any sanding marks left behind. And then now we're gonna go back to diagonals as we use the 1500 to get rid of the 1200 scratches. We are now ready to come into here with some cutting compound. I'm excited to do it. Let's get right to it. For this, I'm using some rubbing compound here. This is Smart A+ Pure Compound. And I'll be using my orbital sander here, random orbital. Gonna set it to 4,000 for this initial step. And let's see what we can do here. Hey, where are you going? Where are you going? Get back over here. This is interesting. Don't run away. Nice try, but I got you back. I got you. For the compound, we had the wheel set to 4,000. We're going to run that down to 2,000 now with the polishing. Get this baby set up on here. And we have shaken this up well, and we're going to go with this Smart A15 Pure Polish. Works well with that stuff. Good second step, and we'll see how this works out. It looks pretty shiny from here. Let's see how it wipes off. I am still seeing a little bit of our scratches in there from the 1500, so I'm going to hit it with some more compound before we finish up doing this on top. Okay, now we're ready to try polish, because that looks a lot better. Back to original Radiant Silver Metallic OEM spec. Wow. That looks good. Like I sprayed it perfectly. Beautiful. All right, we get the front and we're done with the top. Well, I can't stand it. I've got to see something going together on this, because I'm ready to start slapping some things together, and we can't do any of this stuff on the sides yet because I still got to cut and buff all of that. So I picked up some silicone spray, and I'm going to use it on a lot of the old tired rubber gaskets and seals. I'll put that on, and then we'll snap this in and bolt it down, and it'll be done. Go throw some screws on the inside, and that puppy will be done. Boy, that looks good. Okay, so the upper part of this door side rail looks fantastic all the way down here to the A-pillar and the C-pillar, I guess. Now we're going to move on to the doors, these doors on this side. And again, remember, the orange peel here is much lighter. So I'm thinking, I definitely don't need to start with the 800, but I'm thinking perhaps with the aluminum bars and the 1200 for starters to knock down the orange peel and then hit it with the 1500 and then buff and polish. I think we'll be good. Well, now that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. No key in the truck. I'm just out here sanding and all of a sudden it got a mind of its own and started clicking. Very strange. You should have no power going to any of these relays. Here's a lesson for you. When you're doing your wet sanding, you want to make sure that your area is nice and clean and organized, and you don't want any of your stuff sitting around where it can get, you know, dirty impurities up on the sandpaper that you then take to your door and try to sand a nice big scratch into the paint that you just painstakingly went through weeks of work to make look perfect. So after quite a few choice words, maybe some things thrown around the shop, certainly a beer in my belly, and some time to calm down and think about it, that's some pretty thick clear coat. And even though we got a good scrape out of that from our sandpaper, we were just working with the 1200. That doesn't matter. That one little scratchy pebble or whatever it was 1 grit, and that's very aggressive. But what we're going to do is we're going to switch to some 800 right in this area, and we're just going to see if we can smooth that out a little bit, maybe get it down to where it's just in the clear coat. But regardless, we're going to be stuck with it. So I don't want to sand it too aggressively and take off all the clear coat around it. I'm probably not going to get to the bottom of it, but I do want to get it smoothed out a little bit so I can get a better assessment, and then we can shine it up and see how it looks afterward. Straighten up, Biff, and quit being a cheapskate. Let's get back to fixing this. Our 1 grit did in fact get through the clear coat down into our silver, and that sucks, but nothing we're going to do about it right now, and probably ever, to be honest with you. It looks pretty decent. I know it's there. That's the way these usually go. You have mistakes that you know are there and nobody else is necessarily going to see them. We did shrink the size of it a little bit with that 800 grit. Now we'll hit it with the 1200 here and see how that does for us. You want to make sure this guy's clean too, so you're not dragging anything across there. And there we go. We're going to call that, unfortunately, good enough. But you know what? Right here next to it, there and there, we got a couple little rock chips that we painted over as well. So again, we didn't go for perfection on this, but we do have it sanded down to the 1200 grit that we're using on the rest of this at this point in time. So now that we have our fresh, clean paper, let's get back to sanding this thing with 1200 and pretend that didn't happen. Okay, so a lot of work on the bottom part of this door. Still not 100% satisfied with it. And I did do a little bit of a burn there. You can see at this angle, it really shows up. But you get down here at other angles and it disappears. So we did get a little bit of a burn right there where we just were aggressively going after that scratch. You'll see it in certain light. The other thing you can see in certain light is the scratches that are still showing through in that clear coat from the sanding. So I'm not real happy with that. I already did a second pass with the rubbing compound. I will probably have to do that again. I'm just trying to be very careful and not hit that burnt spot anymore. I need to work around that. So I'm a little bit gun shy for that. I don't want to continue to make that worse, but it is going to require one more pass with rubbing compound and polish before I think we have this door where we want it. So after a couple painstaking hours, this door is done. It reminds me a lot of the blue car, and that is to say that cutting and buffing is not as easy as it looks, and to really do it right, you got to take some time. It's not perfect. There are still some scratches and lines in there, but it feels glassy smooth. With the exception of our one little scratch and burn spot there, which feels perfect. You can't feel anything there. This door actually turned out extremely well for what we are aiming to do on this. You can see, even compared to our front door, which again, I thought that the paint went down pretty good on these doors. It looks 10 times better for sure with respect to the shininess and the orange peel. And from 5 feet away, 10 feet away, okay, we can keep up in that if you want, but it definitely looks better than the other door from even this distance. And don't even get me started on the fender and the bed, because these are going to take a whole lot of sanding, and if this work was relatively easy, that will not be. But then again, we're going to start with 800 on that. But this goes to show us we do need to be careful when we're cutting through that clear coat, because even with the 1200, we did use some 800 right there. So with the 800, we definitely run the risk of getting too deep, especially if we make multiple passes. But look at the difference here. You can definitely see this one, but look at this light here. So you can see all the orange peel in that light. We come to the front door and it's much better. And then when we get to the rear door, it is nearly perfect. Like I say, a door a day. This is going to take some time. One door down, 3 to go, and then we still have the hard parts to do, the bed and the hood and fenders. But we're getting there step by step. The thing's gonna look fantastic when we're done, and it will be in this episode. So I'm gonna go take a break and then get back at it. Okay guys, we are back at it, and it's a new day. Several days later, it's a new day. We've had a lot of new days since you last saw us. But what we have done is, where we last left off, we were looking at this paint. We were correcting the back door. We had a fail with the scratch, which we semi-buffed out. That door is going to have to be repainted. We'll get to that at a later date. But what I do still need to do is continue correcting this just a little bit. It still has some scratches in it. It's not a mirror finish. We want to get it there so that we can get the rest of the truck looking the same way. So I've done a lot of research, and I've procured some more toys to help out in this endeavor. The first one is an air-powered sander, so that we can flip over to wet sanding with some higher quality sandpaper, and taking our time. You'll see as we go through it, we're going to be taking our time so that we're not speeding through this and trying to burn through stuff. This is not quick work. It took a day on the door last time, and that's pretty much par for the course. We might get that door finished and another door done today. Maybe we get a little further. We'll see how much we get done today. But I've also got some new products here which are going to really help us. We're not going to skimp on the microfiber towels. We're going to make sure we're using plenty of those. We got this spray detailer here, which we're going to use to make sure that we have the surface completely free of any debris before we touch sandpaper to it, so we don't have any more mishaps like we had on that rear door. We've got some high quality 3D initial compound, which we'll use with our step 1 wheel. We've got some intermediate compound that we will use to start moving over into the polishing range. And then we've got some essentially swirl remover correction glaze to get to that final phase. From a sandpaper standpoint, it really depends on what we are doing on, like which part of the truck we're doing, because some of the areas have really horrible orange peel. In those areas, we'll probably start with the 1000 grit. We can then work our way up. We have 1500, 2000, all the way up to the 3000 grit that we can use. And it's a premium sanding disc. So with the higher quality, we should have, these should last longer, cut more consistently, and have less of a chance of wearing out. So with that, let's go ahead and get set up and get ready to start working on that rear door. Went over once and just still seeing a few too many scratches in there. Trying to get that dull finish out. I can really see it up in the black, which is telltale. It's hard to see it in the silver unless you back away from it. Up close and by feel, it feels perfect. But so we are gonna go to the 3000. I'm thinking that maybe some of those original 800 grit sanding marks were just a little bit too deep and we never got them quite out. So I'm gonna blow this off before I use it. Away from the truck would be a good idea. We've wiped it down with the detailer. Nothing that's gonna get in between the sander and the paint. Let's see with a little bit of water and sanding what this thing does. This door is my experimental door because we already know that we need to repaint it because of wherever that is, right here. Couldn't even see it from this angle. But we know we're gonna need to repaint it because of this. So this is an experimental door. We're gonna keep going on it. Hopefully not mess it up any further. Hopefully make it look fantastic and then move on to the rest. Okay, stepping it up to the 2000 is looking a lot better. We can see a lot more of the haze, a little more uniformity across there. The areas we still need to hit a little bit more. So we will step down to 2000, then we'll come back up to 3000 and then hit the compounds. And hopefully we will have grasped a good understanding of how to get these things looking perfect. If there's anything that this job is telling me, it's that the shitty parts of the truck are gonna take a hell of a long time to get right. We have done 2000 grit on this with the new air sander. We did 3000 grit. We've done the compound. We've done the intermediate hybrid compound and polish. And now we are ready to move on to our correction glaze swirl remover with the new pad, third and final step to get this door looking nearly perfect. And it is not perfect, but then again, silver's hiding this really well. The example I saw was on a dark colored vehicle, and I think our black is looking all right. Again, not perfect, but it's looking pretty good. And once we get this final step on here with the correcting glaze and get it a nice shine, I think this door is gonna be done and we're gonna be able to see enough of a mirror finish in there to make ourselves happy enough to move on and say that we figured out how to tackle this. It's just so much more to go. Maybe a truck wasn't the best vehicle to start learning how to correct clear coat on. Okay, so what time is it here? After about, almost 3 hours, we did this door again. So we're gonna have to get out of the habit of doing doors twice. But wow, that I gotta be honest with you, it is so much better than when we walked in here this morning after even how good it turned out after the last one. So we're looking really good. I am not ready to drive this truck onto a Meekham's Auto Auction or Barrett Jackson or anything like that. But that's not what we're going for. You guys know that. We want this truck to look good and keep going for another 19 years, maybe. Not for me, most likely, but at least for somebody. And it does that. It looks good. There are some areas where the reflection of the light is perfectly crystal clear. And then there are others where it's slightly cloudy and you can see just a little bit of where, it's not quite, all the scratches aren't out. And then you look right next to it and you can see the orange peel and the other pieces that are still there that we're probably not even going to sand and correct. I'm not going to do that here and run the risk of destroying it when it's good enough and it's in an area that people aren't frankly staring at. The bed, the fenders, the hood, yes, get it. I get it. We're gonna fix those. But the doors looking pretty good. I think I'm always gonna walk up to this in direct sunlight when it hits me, and I'm gonna be like, oh, I missed a spot. That's just the way it works. I can already see some in here that I'm gonna be saying that about. But my God, I don't want to sit here and sand all the way through all my paint and then be back to square one and have to paint this thing again. So anyway, much better than it was, and fantastic for a garage paint job. At least this one door and maybe the top. What is that they always say? Better perfect than good. Better lucky than perfect. Good enough over perfection. I don't know, but that's where we're at. Good enough over perfection. I like that. So let's go with that one. One thing I want to point out to you as you cut into this clear coat, straight on you can see a little bit here of where it's not quite all leveled out yet. You can see it more on the edges here as you start to get into the orange peel, and then work your way further into it and remove more and more of it, getting closer to having it smooth. But there is so much more in there than you realize, and the reason you can't stop at this point and you have to keep going, you can't do a partial job, is because when you go to shine this, that is not going to get shiny. It's going to have and it's not going to look like, oh, I just had some orange peel. It's going to look bad. You've got to cut all the way through. So if you look at all of these right here that we're seeing, the whole surface, I've just been going over it with the 1500. You can see how much I still have yet to do. That's why we're going to keep sanding this thing, because we've got to get that completely smoothed out with this grit before we move on to the next one and work our way up and then get into our compounds and our polishes to get this thing looking mirror glossy. Okay, so I know I said I'm going to finish this on this episode, and I still might, with a lot of skipping and fast forwarding, time lapse, or just lying to you. But off camera, I just went through another full round of compound, stage 2 compound and polish, and the overall glaze. I just couldn't quite get where I wanted to be with the gloss on it and the luster. I'm just so frustrated by the scratches that I can still see in there. And while they are still not completely gone, what I have discovered is speed is your friend. So once, maybe not with the sanding, maybe not with the orbital sander, but with this polisher, once you get to that point where you are polishing this stuff up, you need to be able to pull a little bit of heat into that clear coat to really get it to shine and have that lustery gloss. So I'm really happy with where it sets now. It is about another 50% better than what it was where I left you off on the last one and tried to talk myself into thinking it was okay. We still aren't perfect. I could sit here and buff on this thing all the way down to the bare metal and probably still not get it perfect, because it's a paint job I did in this garage. But to be able to get it to this level of shine, man, that looks good. This, to me, looks like I'm back to factory. Don't look at my burn through over here. It's still there, but this looks like factory. So we are at a point now where we can start putting together this door. And that's the only thing, because we have so much more yet to sand and cut and buff. And that is gonna, we'll see. I'm either gonna speed you through it or I'm gonna end the video here. You'll just have to see what happens right now.